And one final point, many of you already know that Magnolia is America's last large-scale romantic-style garden. And the farmers today are going to talk about how you can take all of that beauty, all of that effort of trying to work with and cooperate with nature and bring it down to a small garden, your backyard garden. And we had, like I said, we had this reception last night. I got some gardening landscape tips from you that I'm going to hopefully one day implement in my backyard garden in James Island. So without further ado,
and that'll help.
Yeah. And let me say that they co-authored one book together, and Mary Farmer has written a couple of books on the subject. So without further ado, Dargans.
Thank you very
much. Good morning. We're very excited to be here, and we're thrilled. This is a new presentation, totally designed for this occasion, and a lot of thought and work has gone into it as to what is a romantic garden and how you can apply it in your lifestyle and your property if you wish. And when we were, years ago, we were getting some professional help from Reed Buckley, who is probably the United States' best speaker. He died last year. And we interviewed with him, did our presentation, and he said, you know, y'all are both good, your styles are so much different, you can't be on this. We used to do I talk, she talks, I talk, she talks. And he said,
it's a Sonny and Cher routine.
It was funny. I mean, it was good, but it was just, he said, it's just so disconcerting. One of you introduced, the other would get away. You can't be on the stage at the same time.
He saved our marriage.
So, as it is, number one, the best gets on the stage, and I work the camera. So, thank y'all for coming, and we'll get rolling.
Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you, Hugh Dargan, for sticking with me for 31 years. Yeah. He's I'll tell you a little more about ourselves as we get into the show, but I know you're just ready to have a love affair with your garden, right? Isn't that why you're here in the audience today? And before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to have a love affair with your garden, let me do a little housekeeping. At the end of this lecture, we're going to make a video that we will release so that you can watch something, review it, see how you resonate with some of the material. And so in order to do that and send it to you, I need your email address. And so if you will be so kind, I promise I'm not going to spam you, but we will send you a follow-up saying, thank you for being here. This was the link. I'll also send you today's text. This is a brand new lecture. I've got goosebumps just thinking about giving it to you. I've been practicing. But it's unusual. And it's special for Magnolia. We're so honored about having been invited to be here. So we created something new. So I'm going to pass this around so your first name, last name, and your email address. We'll get the video link back to you early next week. Now the next thing is we've been teaching landscape design for the beginning of our marriage. That was, we were married in 84. First got together in 84. And one of the first courses we gave in Charleston, well, actually we did one in 86, and then we did 2 or 3 more. And Nancy Brown, Nancy, raise your hand. She is great. She came to the one we gave in 1993, and she's just, this 21 years ago. She just brought back her notebook. It was called The Art of Garden Design. We went and studied every single, we went to 2 different separate walking study group tours, about 20 of us, to maybe 16 gardens in the historic district that we designed. We knew about them. We with 12 Briggs, the historic landscape architect did. So we express the principles of landscape design, art elements, design principles, and how to have a classic garden. She took pictures of everything, stapled them with the plans. We gave the plans to the book. I recommend y'all make friends with Nancy and because I've not seen this book in years. I mean, it's even hand-tied. I mean, it was an amazing thing to produce these. Was that the one where it was so windy that we had to all retreat to the Mills house and drink all afternoon? We had one where transformers were blowing up as we ran through the streets, and it was unbelievable. Thank you so much, and I'm honored that you're back with us. That's so much fun coming home to visit. Now, we'll get started. I'm trying to think of anything else. I do want to thank Tom and Herb and, of course, Drayton for opening their arms and welcoming us to come today to speak with you. Now, let me know my audience a little bit. Which of you are master gardeners? Raise your hand, please.
Wow.
Well, we have over half of you are master gardeners. Bravo to you. Thank you for giving your time to the community. You will make the world a better place. And my motto is heal the earth one garden at a time. And master gardeners, you're charged with that, you know, I'm sure. Then the others of you, how many would say that you're a beginner or novice gardener who's looking at those little white tags in the plant pots, wondering if they can believe them? Okay. We've got about 6 novice gardeners here. I too get perplexed by those little tags, but I work all over the country, as does Hugh Dargan, and I look at them to see if it's good to zone 5 to 8, if it's the heat tolerance, if it needs shade or sun. It's good for me to remember. And I'm a botanist by training. I was a botanist at a botanical garden called Cheapwood in Nashville, Tennessee for many years. Then went back to graduate school and got an advanced degree of my master's in landscape architecture. I've been a professor of landscape architecture at Clemson University, teaching young landscape architects and adults to do the best they could to help Mother Nature. So it's been a real pleasure to be involved in this world of landscape design for a long time. Now, with regard to Hugh Dargan, he has his bachelor's in landscape architecture from the University of Georgia. So we met at a Southern Garden History Society meeting in Natchez, Mississippi. It started that design conversation that's never stopped. So it's wonderful to be together at this event. We don't often get to do that. I'm going to be sharing my favorite romantic gardens, some pictures with you, but also I'd like to get started with have a love affair with your garden and learn the elements of such a garden design. So even, even this is going to be titled, this is new, I have not memorized this lecture yet. Transform your home environment into a place of magic and mystery in 3 easy steps. Even Adam and Eve had a garden. They had it figured out. A garden of paradise, complete with a fruit tree and wild beasts, sex, a calm and peaceful landscape of great beauty, a woodland setting with an open place for sun, a place to be at ease with your loved one. Does this sound like your garden?
That could be in Magnolia.
War-torn with woes, tattered from the travails of time, or faded and jaded. Do you need to pump up the volume in your garden, put on its evening gown, or give it a facelift? Maybe you just need to take it on vacation. So, I invite you to have a love affair with your garden. So what is a romantic garden? Since Adam and Eve had their ideas, what are yours? I would like to each of you to ask you to take out a piece of paper. Does anyone need paper? We can tear it out of that sheet I'm sending around. I'd like for you to please help me and write down what you found inspirational during this lecture. I really want to know how to help you be better romantic garden designers. Define that love affair with your garden. So at the end, we're going to ask anyone who wants to volunteer to share their thoughts. So if you write it down, that's more helpful. So how do you create a dreamy place, a home environment infused with magic, mystery, and romance? So you're here in Magnolia Gardens, a place of great magic and mystery. It's a natural place with all the elements of a romantic garden. We'll explore these elements and show how you too can adapt them to your home landscape no matter its size. So the history of a romantic garden is really interwoven with the picturesque landscape movement in the 18th century in England. Seeking to revel in nature, its natural topography and connection to the great beyond, the picturesque was stuff of poetry. To tour Stourhead and Stowe by carriage and picnic along the way was akin to a party game called Name That Tune. Visitors in 1767, 1788, 1810, those visitors would read the tour book, which was a manifesto filled with poetry that reflected the politics and culture of the time. And by the way, in the Library Society on King Street in Charleston, there's an original tour book, leather-bound and signed for Stowe. And I highly recommend you go and read those poems and look at the map of Stowe. It's fantastic. So this was really heady stuff. A garden visit was romanticized outing. It was a miniature grand tour of Italy. And so that's what is sort of amazing when you bring back ideas of trips and put them into your gardens, into memory book gardens. So today, the romantic landscape is still one that holds or creates memories because of its spirit of place, its genius loci. Did you know that genius loci, a Greek word for a term for the actual spirit of a place, like at Delphi, the spirit who was on the orifice that gave readings to people. They considered special places like these that we see at Magnolia Gardens to have a spirit that was in place there. I think it's really fascinating. I get chills when I think about this. I do. The special feeling you get there when you're in a place of great beauty. It encourages you to open your heart to something larger than yourself, to be vulnerable, to experience love, intrigue, or just the twinkle in your lover's eye. Even childhood memories are romanticized when you think of catching fireflies or sitting with your grandmother at a bench to study their magical light. Or maybe when your anniversary was celebrated with a bird bath or a bench placed in the garden. Maybe you stole a kiss under the shelter of a live oak in the privacy of a garden, or better yet, behind the billowy, musty-smelling, mysterious woods. Hugh Dargan proposed to me at Middleton Place, right next door in the Camellia Garden, 31 years ago. And we've written a lot of books and had a lot of fun, and Reine de Fleur is one of my favorite camellias, which you seldom see. Tom, do you have that particular one here?
Yes.
I'd love to see it. I would like a current photograph of the state-of-the-art of the Reine de Fleur. It's the queen of flowers, by the way. Gardens of romance are really part of our lives. But really, how do you define what makes romantic gardens tick? You and I have been studying gardens to see what makes them tick all of our little lives, from bicycling in England to studying brand American gardens and abroad. But you know, sometimes when you're married and you're working on gardens together, we have this big property in Highcote in High Hampton for almost 20 years, and we designed 8 gardens on the property. And Hugh had these fabulous romantic places with like big mossy rocks and a green transparent sort of umbrella and 2 wooden chairs we called the cocktail terrace. And so he would make these really sweet places on our garden, and I miss that, but we now have a smaller property called Dovecote, which is next door to Cornucopia Restaurant in Cashers. And this past summer we had 14 garden lectures called the Garden Talk Salon. So when you want to know about that, we'll send you information about our upcoming lectures this next summer. And anyway, sometimes I'm called the Julia Child of landscape design. And now the recipe that follows will transform your home garden into a romantic place of mystery in those 3 easy steps. Plus, it's going to offer you tips you can immediately implement in your home environment. And because I'm a landscape architect, and because I'm an old teacher, we're going to take your garden to school. How does that sound? All right. So, first, look lovingly at your garden. With new eyes, discover its timeless 4 parts and their potential for magic, mystery, and romance. This is timeless landscape design. Say yes in sickness and in health. To the don't forgets, what to include in your home environment that provide inspiration, healthy living, and romance. This is covered in lifelong landscape design. Then, 14 ways to put on its party hat. This is romantic places you can create at home, customizing your pattern language. So you've got a lot to write down, right? So I hope you all are thinking about ways you can share at the end of this lecture. So even Adam and Eve had a garden of romance, so let's have a love affair with your own. So let's start out by looking lovingly at your home environment with new eyes. What I'm suggesting is that when you go home today, all juiced up from this lecture, that you stand at the front entrance of your property and take a picture. And take a picture to the right and to the left. And think a little bit. And then go and take a picture of the front door of your house, to the right, to the left. Turn around, take a picture looking out. Then walk around the side like you normally do when you go to visit your garden. The path you take to move the leaves or move your friends around. Take pictures as you go. And when you get to the back, take a picture looking out and looking back at the house. What I'm trying to get for you is a structured book of images that you can then refer to, print them off, Refer to them, write notes on them. This is your design book. It's free. It's the most inexpensive way you can put your garden through its paces. And so we want you to sort of think of composing pictures as you do the walk. Think of important trees, the view you might want, even if it's not there. Think of how you can structure it to make it the best it can be, the most romantic, the most inspirational place. But dream, imagine. Remember that positive change is really good. Now, did you know that your home property has 4 parts? The approach and arrival sequence, which is the welcome mat you put out for your family, friends, the UPS truck. Then there's the hub, which is the house itself. It's cladding, how it sits on the ground. The shape of the building is a T-shape, L-shape. What do you see when you look at a Google image of the roof? That's the shape of your building. Then there are the perimeter spaces where you have these romantic garden dinners for 2 or 20. And then there are perimeter spaces that include destination passages to walk out into your garden from the back terrace, to go to a beautiful spot on the property. These are those romantic passages that you can create on your land. Now you can open your arms to romance without distraction. By the junk piled chaotically in the way, if you go through this process in your mind of how to improve it, it will be easier for you. You can really be more romantic if you don't have a chaotic landscape. That's a message to you all. So I want you to take a walk around your property on a mission, and then even a small change can create a mind shift that can make you feel better and be more vibrant. So imagination is what it's all about. That's romance, isn't it? As you open up the possibilities, anything on paper which costs nothing, but could become something, you're channeling inspiration like the most sage designers in the world do. They channel inspiration. They see it. They think through it. They get under the skin of the property. It's a very special talent, and you can do it effortlessly all right in your own backyard. I'm a great believer that if you make a plan of action, you can achieve any goal. And remember that there's no problem in landscape that more labor and money can't solve. Remember that your property has a mind, body, and spirit. The body's the house. The mind is the land. You see, that's where Mother Nature intersects with your building. That's where the rivers, the dirt, the air, the land is what it's all about. And the body has tentacles that reach across the land like the electrical lines, the roads, the drives. And when these two things come together in harmony, if you're using the 4-part master plan, for instance, and going through that process I just described to find its genius loci, you will experience a spirit of place that's indelible, like Magnolia has. That's something you can do. So they're just easy steps you can take. We teach courses in all of this. And I wish I could do that for you today, but we don't have time. So now let's go to the next part, which is called Just Say Yes in Sickness and in Health. Because you know your garden's a little bit like a marriage. What you marry can kind of run away with you in time. You know, it grows up, it gets taller, it gets fatter, it gets smaller. And so it's helpful to kind of have a rudder to guide you along. And what I like to suggest is that you always have these 8 key ingredients in your landscape. So you've already learned about the 4-part master plan and how to get the download of how to help that be the best it can be. But if you add these things, living with the web of life, which is done beautifully here at Magnolia, has social spaces where you dine with that loved partner, facilitating access in sickness and in health. You may have a partner in a wheelchair. You want to facilitate being with them, going around the garden. These, by the way, are based on the therapeutic garden design principles. Energy and action, places to do things, places to live passively, to meditate, to walk a labyrinth, to do qigong, to simply sit and read a book. Don't forget to have stress-free spaces, which are covered in the book Lifelong Landscape Design. And then horticultural therapy, which all you master gardeners in the room know about. And then we want you to get a healthy house. You know, it's a problem if your house has mold, right? We have moldy houses. We've been working for 20 years to get rid of mold. It's not easy. You want to have good air in your house. You want to have clean water in your drinking system. So these are core things that you want to have on your property so that you can have that romantic garden and be up to its challenges. We also have landscape patterns that we've accumulated through our lifestyle of working with the land. The bench and sitting with the grandmother looking at fireflies is one of my first memories as a child. And I always think of that when I sit on a bench, is that my grandmother introduced me to one, and she introduced me to nature kind of simultaneously. I was probably a year old or something. But that bench is the earliest land pattern that you really relate to, and there are not enough benches in landscapes, so that's one of our missions. And there are many other land patterns in there. We've mapped over 250 land patterns of man, and that's what it's called. So now let's talk about putting on the party hat for your property. That's really why y'all are here. You want to know the elements of how to do all of this. Forget the theory, but the theory is important. I think that gives you the depth to do it well. We're going to be talking about 14 different ways to put on your party hat. You remember that song, 15 Ways to Lose Your Lover? It's kind of 14 ways to love your garden. Anyway. So I won't read them out to you, but I will go through them. And by the way, the handout that you'll be emailed has the list, so you don't have to write that down. But one of the first places that we've always thought, I know when Hugh Dargan was wooing me, and we went out to Middleton, we went to other places, he always would take me on a picnic. And we'd go and we'd sit on a little patch of grass. I mean, what could be simpler? It doesn't even have to be at your house. But if you have it at your own home, that's even nicer. So a small patch of grass doesn't take much more than 8 feet by 8 feet, that's 64 square feet, to put down a nice little blanket. You know, you can do yoga, you can do qigong, you can serve 4 people seated on a small pad on a landscape. 8 by 8 is not much. We evoke passion with plants. When you put plants together in romantic combinations, what does this mean? Well, we work with the 4 art elements: line, color, form, and texture. This picture shows line, which is the pathway. There's also kind of a line of blue going around it. You see how they use the plants for movement and framing? There's form, which is not well shown in this. Boxwoods add form, for instance. They're rounded balls. Your eye seeks out similar objects, and it makes you feel more. The red hot thing that's important. So anyway, and then you have texture. Texture is not well exhibited in this picture, but when you think of a fatsia, you know, the shape of the leaf, it's a large coarse leaf texture. If you put a fatsia next to an azalea, that's a fine leaf textured plant. Those two make your eye interested. And those are the 4 art elements: line, color, form, and texture. Have you heard that before? You know, if you've studied art and history, you may, or art, you've heard it, but you may not have seen it in the land. These are things we like to teach. Now, color, because we're doing harmonious, romantic types of things. Spring, eternal spring with Magnolia solangiana or stellata in all their glory. We love those plants in the South. And I know Magnolia does them spectacularly. How about primulas? Collections of plants that have a theme that flow through a certain part of your garden a certain time of year. It doesn't have to be going all the time in every part of your garden. Create a garden that has spaces that tapestry-like bring you through it to honor the changes of the season. Have a moment of glory in your garden in different spaces. Forms, like this beautiful weeping willow. I love this particular. I can just see in a little rowboat punting and going underneath that. And isn't it just the most romantic type of plant? So how about cozy seating? Benches for 2 people. There's one right down here. Isn't that sweet? With all this picnic area out in front of it. And look, a moment of glory with the, I think these are violets, violas in bloom. That's a pretty place. It's so simple. 1 tree, 1 bench, some grass, a bird feeder, and nature. Other seating for 2. This always looks a little uncomfortable to me to step up on the seating wall and sit. But it's sort of like being on a mount, you know, the British idea of being on a mount and looking down over your kingdom. It's only 18 inches off the ground, but a little change in elevation will also change the way you feel about your life at that moment. That's a principle of healthcare garden design. When you walk into a darker shady place, into a bowl of light, or go up in elevation and down, you tend to have to focus on your movement, and it changes your mood. And this is good for you psychologically, to change your mood, to get out of the rut, to release feelings of despair, or bring in feelings of love. I love this because I think the furniture is not what this picture is about. It's the backdrop of nature and the idea of a place to sit that's just sort of invisible. I love these striking things in landscape. They're not a focal point. They're a place to be, but they don't take away from the bigger picture. So I sort of suggest this to you all. I like these wiry things. But also an architectural element like this is a fun thing to see in the garden, so that's easily a two-seater bench. Now for intimate dining, people often ask me, how much room do I need? I've just moved to a smaller town home, and I want to be able to have a table bistro and maybe a little fountain on the wall and maybe, several other items like a little kale garden in a pot and a wind chime. And these are all things that you can do on a balcony. But basically, something that is about 8 feet long, I told you 8 feet, about 8 feet, which most balconies have, that size, you can do an awful lot in that space. And this just shows you 2 chairs and a small bistro table. You could put a fountain on this wall, a pot full of kale here, maybe hang a wind chime from that tree or from that balcony post. You see, you can make your space very flexible. That's space planning at its best. How about steps? I've already alluded to the fact that when you go up a hill, go up just a little step or two, that it changes your attitude, it changes your mental focus. And it is in some way, I think, analogous to New Horizons for a romantic landscape, is to include some sort of change in elevation that leads you on up, if you can. At Mrs. Whaley's garden at 58 Church Street, many of you all have been there, there's a tiny pond set about 2/3 the way back in that beautiful, classically designed garden that Latrell Briggs did with her. And it has a small step down with one brick edge, which is about, I think, two inches. You step down, which is not usually what we do in gardens, but the shape and everything works well. You step down, and then there's a pond, and then you step back up again. That small amount of change of elevation, if you live on flat land, will work. Just remember, you need to be very careful because you don't want it to be a trip hazard. But in that garden, it works exquisitely. So remember, that's a good tip. These are round steps that we call the luncheons or English steps. And they're hard to design, but you basically, there's a circular center and then step seating areas because you can use it almost like an amphitheater. This is about 5 feet wide in the center. And remember, as with all New Horizons, there can be danger ahead. So be careful with what you're doing. But I love this. As in life, you can have danger on the paths you go down. You don't know what's really going to be out there. So when Hugh and I studied in England so many times we can't even count it. We've been to probably 800 gardens or more there. Many of them 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Great Dixter has these. You see the round circle again, the node, and then you walk down these 3 steps and look at the little frill of seeded, I don't know what it was, that they seeded along the cracks. I don't think it was viola. But that moment of glory when all the little pieces were coming together was just spectacular. How about fragments from the past? This is a romantic tip that most of you already know. You've probably done the memorial bird bath or maybe a pretty stone in honor of a dear pet that departed. Or maybe you planted a tree because you lost a loved one. I know we've done that. We planted, by the way, 4 palmettos on Society Street when we lived there in honor of our older friends that passed away. In a 3-year time, we kept losing these older friends. And now those trees are huge trees. That was done probably about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And we'd go back and visit the trees every time we come to town. We had a house on Society. That's the block between King and Meeting, by the way. So, but you can have fragments from the past, statues, things that take you down memory lane. You could have a connection to the greater beyond. This is the Green Man. which I love the idea of doing that. Or maybe a piece from your farming heritage if you live out in the country. I think pieces of farm equipment done aesthetically, placed in the landscape are really quite charming and take you back to an earlier, I wouldn't say it was a simpler time, I think it was awfully hard to live like that, but it's a wonderful acknowledgement of your forefathers' heritage. And then how do you place these? As a focal point at the end of a path? By the way, this is known as a node. When you walk straight to something, that's a focal point. The node is the area surrounding it, and you can go left or right. And I guarantee everybody in here who has a garden design problem in this room, all your problems are in your nodes. Take it at face value, but if you start analyzing your property, think to yourself, is this a node? What did she mean by that? Oh, I see, it's kind of got this rough oval shape, and then there's paths going this way. How do I make that better? And so that's something in garden design we like to teach. You can create enticing vistas and views. You can capture a view. You can create one looking out your kitchen window or your dining room. You can frame a view. You do a lot. I love taking advantage of off-site views, a steeple in the distance, or maybe a beautiful tree or rock outcropping. A lot of my work is in western North Carolina. I take the views there very seriously, and we're fortunate to have exquisite ones. Or maybe you have a way to announce a view in a very subtle and easy way with grasses that are just mown. I love pollinator gardens, and I challenge everybody in this room to create a pollinator garden, to take on a pollinator project with your school or your garden club. Help our pollinators, our bats, our butterflies, our little native bees, our honeybees. They all need help. They need places to rest, nest, feed, and breed. And that's the same with birds. So pollinators really need help. And they love this kind of thing. That's what it's all about. It's okay to have a bushy area on your property. It's okay. Put it on the sides. Let it just be wild. Another little vista would be maybe, looking down a path through a framed view of two upright and inspirational. Trees have shapes and they're inspirational. The upright pyramidal shape of a towering Italian cypress, or maybe a juniper, are great framing elements. Or maybe you're going to look down through a pretty billowy path of pollinator plants into a more clipped area where you have a sense of a very different type of garden room you're going into. But it isn't all walled in. But it's a beautiful pathway down into something else. A change in your mental concepts, too. And this, I love this picture. This is not our work, but I love this fact that there's this red-brown look here at a bowl, in a wonderful seating wall, and then this vista beyond. And it's all so simple, the house just kind of bleeds on out into the landscape. I find that very romantic. I love outward-looking views. And then we talked about the beauty of a weeping willow. We've always had trouble with weeping willows in our own home landscape. We use corkscrew willows, and they tend to always get some sort of borer problem, but I do love them, and they're sort of ephemeral. So when I see a good one, I like to honor it. A little water music. How about lullabies of ripples and water? Well, who does it better than here in Magnolia? When you drive in the entry road and you see the Audubon swamp, it just takes my breath away every time I see that. Duckweed, birds, weeping, the Spanish moss, everything about that water drops my cortisol level and I feel better. It's simple. It brings down my stress level. Do y'all know what cortisol is? Okay. Your fight and flight syndrome? So if you're in a garden and if you're breathing deeply, especially if you're in a conifer type of garden, it's called Shinrin-yoku, you're forest bathing. You're bathing in the atmosphere of the plants. And that will drop your cortisol level immediately, which is really, really one of the big principles of therapeutic garden design. You can get that here in Magnolia. What could be more romantic than to have a lower stress level, right? I love these little bits. This is an antique picture we found with a painted background. Isn't that a fabulous, old-fashioned looking water puddle? So there's so many pictures I could have shown you of water, but you're here in the environment that has it. So go seek them out. Please put water in your gardens any way you can. This one I think is kind of a fun title, Your Strolling Ways. So, the winding walks for leisure hours. This is a nice natural curve. It's also known as the C-shaped or picturesque line of beauty. And I'll show you another one. You can find them when you start, when you know it when you see it. And there's one here. You stroll like this, and then you curve. You open into a larger area with a little focal point. This is here, Japanese. Then you stroll on out. That's a piece of a line of beauty. This is a great example, and they're here at Magnolia too. See that? That's an S-shaped curve. It's winding, and your view is always changing. In the picturesque landscape ethic, what they would do back in the 18th century was they would position in these long, sweeping curves that usually people were in carriages. Big, billowy masses of hydrangeas, or something that would help your eye catch that, and then you see the next billowy mass of hydrangea there. So you'd be pulled through the landscape by the use of plants. It's a great element of design. In this case, this is a hand-painted historic slide showing primulas all along that path. Don't forget in your winding walks to add a bench. Isn't that a wonderful bench just seated along a winding way? And then your plant materials is also important. An early spring garden with phlox in full bloom or bluebells is the prettiest, I think, most romantic landscape because the early spring ephemerals sort of awaken you. It's your new lease on life, your new beginnings, your hopefulness of the future. But my favorite picture of all is this. I love that this is simply mown. There are grasses here, and then the stilts of the trees give an edge, almost like the side of a pavilion or a building. And you see through it, so it's like a transparent veil. And the light, the golden light of the sunset is coming through it. What could be more romantic than that? And then the fact that when they planted this for their maintenance practices, you got to work easy maintenance into your romantic landscapes, is they just mow about a foot beside that tree, and then they let the grasses flow out. So there's not a hard edge, but it's also good for the trees because they're not streamering them, murdering them with their weed eater along the sides. I think this is a brilliant way to handle the edge of the woodland. It's a planned woodland in this case. Let's linger longer in shady places. Arbors of permanence. I think this is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. This is in Europe. And I've never seen it planted, but I was at one in England, and you could actually climb up a little ladder and jump into it, and then climb out again. It was really very funny. So humor on the land is also very important. I think that arbors that have the gourds, bird gourds hanging down from them are really interesting. It makes you linger to look at them, to love them, to wonder how anyone could do that. Pavilions overlooking a beautiful view. We were recently at Asticue Terraces in Maine. We love to go to Maine, near our harbor in Acadia. And the terraces there are incredible. They look down over this amazing basin, which is a yacht yard. But then, like this one, it's not here at Magnolia, but that is, I think, the best of a low country experience, is to be in a little puddle of water or a large body of water in a little garden pavilion, seeing the dragonflies go by, seeing the fish move the reeds underneath you, watch the egret land. That's romantic, and we've got it in spades here. And then this is a screen house with a beautiful, beautiful screen wall and a pretty little eau de book opening. Actually, I think that is a screen opening in the background, and then pretty flowers going up to it. That's a nice, cozy place to snuggle. So, transitions. When we talk about going up steps to have sort of a transition to maybe a new thought process in your life, but bridges throughout history have represented transitions from one stage of life to the next. And I love that photograph of the young couple on the red bridge where they're saying, "I love yous." And the fact that they're in the middle of the bridge, at the beginning, going to their new life, is just wonderful. How romantic would that be? But I think the fact that you could stroll across this is just marvelous. You've got it here. And then on a smaller scale at home, Some of our favorite bridges are just 3 feet wide and about 6 to 8 feet long. And that's still kind of a construction project. There's just a little bit of an arch. It's just enough. And it doesn't even have to be over a wet body of water like a creek or a man-made riverlet. It can just be a dry creek bed that carries water off when you have a storm. And that could lead down to a rain garden, which is be part of the web of life. You could be recycling the water on your property, having plants that like to live in that kind of environment. Then stone, we like stone, but this is a one-lane highway. And if you're trying to maintain a property like this is where these very narrow bridges become kind of a hazard. But one wheelbarrow does just fine. I love those collapsible ones that are made of fiber, and you can just fold them up and hang them on your garage wall and they have one single wheel. I love my little wheelbarrow like that. It's like a big leaf crate, leaf net. And then this is a beautiful, very, very old bridge. I think that's in Bavaria. Another bridge, very simple, 2 wooden planks. What could be easier than this? And 2 wooden handrails. At any age, really, you can enjoy walking across this and not fall off. But this goes into a fruit garden. And so all of these bridges, these transitions into new parts of your life that can be very romantic, are accented when you remember that you have this oneness of life. It's a romantic connection. You and your loved one, you and your pet. You can have a romance with your pet. You can have a romance with your bird. I mean, I don't care if you have a romance with, just have it. Fall in love with your garden. And honor the fact that you're in connection with nature. It will make you be healthier. And you'll be dealing with something outside your body that's bigger than you are, that wants to have you be nourished so you can flourish, to reach your life's goal, to be the best you can be. Look at this little anemone. Isn't that wonderful? He's in the trunk, the bottom cavity of this wonderful tree trunk. So in the last 2 pieces are good take-homes too. The enticing destinations. We've designed lots of gardens in the mountains, and I happen to really love hydrangea paniculata, which we call tardiva. It blooms on late wood. It blooms on wood late in the summer because it blooms on new wood. And we love tardivas, and they come in many shapes and sizes, and limelight is also the same. But we like that because it gives this billowing thing, so it's sort of like a destination garden, and they hold their flowers, so I like this plant a lot. But you can create all kinds of destinations on your property with themes, as I've described throughout this whole slideshow. And you can have as small as 1/8 of an acre and have several different gardens interconnected like a courtyard with small gardeners. Remember, it's just 8 by 8 feet, 64 square feet, to have a tiny room. And they can be, it can feed to one that's maybe 16 by 8, or maybe a path that's 5 feet wide and 20 feet long, and at the end of it's your compost pile. And you make the prettiest compost pile you've ever seen in your whole life. And then you want a circular path around your property. Always try to have a circular path so you don't have to go back the way you came. And if you have Alzheimer's patients at home, this is very important. They get very frustrated with dead ends. So if you have this, lots of clients that have senility in their family, and they need to design the garden so their family can get outside but not get frustrated and be able to be alone. And so they can go and they can walk in a circular route. It can be winding, but a circular route is very important. If they come to a dead end by a fence and a bench, that is not good. So you want to circle it around. That's a really good tip for you all, I hope, someday. So anyway, this is a pretty curved bench. Those circular steps we showed you earlier are right here. And this is her potting shed with an outward-looking view over a big lake. It's a very pretty place. If you do come up to Cashier's, if you ever take our courses up there, we periodically give them. We usually go to this property. It's magnificent. Now the last. This is really about romance. How about a little night magic? Garden lights, garden nights. This is a picture from Stowe. See the S? This is one of its obelisks. The moon, the etching, the idea of being out in this shimmering, pale, differently accented and dappled with light landscape. We love it. But if you don't always have a full moon, you can pretend you do. This is one in Cashier's also, a fire pit, hinting to the fact that you could gather and be warm around a fire with toasted marshmallows. Places like Stonehenge to sit around it, a beautiful vista. This is a birdhouse that has a light in the bottom of it that shines both down and up. Oh, it's actually just a light bulb. And the bird's nest right there. It's really kind of interesting. I don't know why they want to nest there with that light on at night, but they do. And anyway, so that's something to remember, that you could put a light in a birdhouse. I don't know, you might want to put wire on it. I think it would not be great for birds to raise babies and light all the time, so I'm a mother. Low lights, and these just come on a timer. They go off at 10 o'clock or 11 at night, whatever you want to do. They're on a timer, and they're not way up in the sky where they're interrupting nesting and breeding patterns of our wildfowl. They're actually on the ground level. So that's important. You can do that with all kinds of atmospheric, low voltage lighting systems. So now I'm going to quickly go through and share with you a garden in Augusta so that you can kind of see one of these put together. This is called the Four Seasons Garden. We got started a little bit late, so if there's a problem with anybody needing to leave, just let me know. But this is not that long, but I think you might enjoy seeing this. Don't underestimate the power of the Nandina. I know many of us think that they're old hat, don't like them. This is one of the most beautiful Nandina hedges I've seen in my life, and it lines a driveway. And it is a beautiful, festive, berry-filled landscape. And Hugh Dargan did the landscape design for this property for Nolan Calhoun. It's beautiful. It's a big camellia garden. The camellias are placed within, they're all around. She has, it's like 150 different types here of camellias. She moved a lot of them from her mother's property, so some of them were very large. And then we worked consistently with her in a concerted effort to get as many possible varieties. We didn't have random Florida. And then Hugh designed all the winding walks, which is obviously sandy land, and camellias want a little bit more food than pure sand. So there's a composting and nourishment program going on this property to help them grow and flourish. But they're great ones. We've got this type, Dixie Night, and then so there's several different rooms. So there's this wonderful wandering, pastoral, romantic camellia garden, and then there's this formal garden also. So this is garden rooms at its best. It's an 8-acre estate. I know y'all want to see some grand things. So here's the driveway. You drive up and you park, and then you walk in front of the park here. This is the formal garden. This is the Nandina hedge, goes all the way along. This is the winding path that Hugh worked through the woodland to be the camellia garden, which is spectacular. And then this is the formal garden, which was already there. It's a very, very, very old house. That's the oval garden. And then this is a series of vistas as you go through, which I'll show you now. That's that vista garden, straight line to a focal point here, focal point, intermediate focal point there. These are nodes, and you walk one part of the garden along that path. This is it looking, of course, back toward the drive, filled with camellias, filled with azaleas, filled with tall trees. It's really a shade garden, and so we chose the plants appropriately for that. And then the centerpiece has this really, it's hard to see, but it's a water fountain, really old-fashioned basin, and it's always, providing a little bit of music of water. The use of hostas is encouraged on this property, cephalotaxis, some grasses, we like Hocokia grass. And then as you move on through the landscape, you come to the big oval garden. There's a pretty sculpture of a girl sipping from a water basin. And this is an Ophiupogon lawn, Ophiupogon japonica, and we really like that plant a lot. And when you're planting it, by the way, take it apart, get out to a little 4-inch pot, get it nibbed apart, so you fray it at the edges, and then you tear it into pieces, basically. Brute force will make a great lawn. And then you stick them in the lawn, and they grow out, and they become beautiful like that. Otherwise, they make little bumps, and you want to have a homogeneous lawn. You can also plant grape hyacinths in with this kind of lawn. It's a beautiful look to mix the grape hyacinths and the low-growing Ophiupogon. Very romantic. The formal garden is a view straight to their bedroom window. This was right before a big tour to honor the Sacred Heart's campus. Yeah, that's a wow, isn't it? That's pretty romantic. Digitalis mixed with delphiniums. And these came from Goodness Rose. They contract through these plants for this particular event, and we'll do that for you, or at least the whole one for you. This is it in the summertime. It's really more of a early summer. It's a 4-season garden. And then the pretty winding paths, go through the woods and around. Remember, this is just sand paths. And then the collections of hostas interest your eye, color, texture, broadleaf texture, that's coarse texture, next to the azalea, which is the fine leaf texture. It makes your eye, it interests you, so it makes for good garden design. Openings, destinations to go through gates to the rest of the landscape. And then you want, and this was a really bad freeze. Notice the aspidistra were just sizzled to a halt. But they came back and they got cut back and they were fine. You know, hope springs eternal. I love using the variegated aspidistra in our designs, mixing that. This is just sassafras being used as for the hedge. I love the way at the moment of their blossoms falling. They're beautiful sassafras in bloom right now, especially down the drive here at Magnolia. Other larger japonicas set, these are newly planted along her. So there's her little bridge and there's a gully that runs through it. It's just really a wash area. Beautifully placed. It helps frame the view of the house from the road. Another type, can anyone tell me what camellia this is? I'd love, I'm open for identification.
I believe that's Alba plana.
Alba plana, thank you so much. We were hoping we would have a diagnostic. And I've got, by the way, if you all are interested, I've got all of her camellia books is right here. If you want to see some of those in it. I just had a lecture from the North Georgia Camellia Society, and I love camellias. We call this Louisiana Peppermint. It's also known as La Peppermint, L.A. La Peppermint. We got these from Tom Dodd down in Mobile. He called them Louisiana Peppermint. We do too. They come in multicolors on a plant. We really like this plant a lot. Elegans Spendor. And if I've got something wrong, please tell me. Don't have a name on that one, sir. What is a camellia blossom? Camellia blossom, is it hurricane or the? I think it was being female. So.
I would have to think about that.
All right, it's hard to tell with it's not very good projection. Hermes, maybe? Hermes? No, actually, here's Hermes. There's Hermes. Yeah, this is Hermes. I don't know.
No S. No S.
Hermes. Oh, that's right. No S. Not like the luggage maker. But so this is really. You have any idea what that is? That's such a beautiful plant too. Had very glossy. Diane Avalon and John Avalon invited us to work with them back in 1985, 86. When we first saw this garden, it was a total slab of concrete. It was a parking lot for one of the symphony show houses. And we thought they were playing like a mean trick on us. There was a chain link fence around the backyard. So there's nothing there. And we actually did things that the city of Charleston didn't know we were doing. We got rid of some paving and planted a plant. Do you think we're going to get in trouble for that? Don't ask. They won't say no. We also put them around the bottom. This is Trachalispermum Floridanum Madison, I'm pretty sure that's Madison flower, double flowered jasmine. And then we wiggled it through here, this little hole, through the spokes of the gate, and designed the gate as well. This is a narrow, we have Camellia sinensis growing along the wall, which was sort of an amazing thing to have. It worked really well in the shade. They like that. And Elysium floridanum, and then of course there's a barrel arch you go through. Getting back into the small tete-a-tete area for 2. You can have a garden party for 8, a little fountain, a small parterre. We espaliered these using fishing wire, and just slowly added more tiers over time until it festooned the whole side of it. Beautiful pink kitchen house. We like the house anyway, but she really wanted this look, and it's so fabulous. Remember, this was just a concrete parking lot. This was concrete parking lot posts, and there are 2 little garden buildings on either side that we've designed. And the centerpiece, this is a focal point, 4-point master plan. And then there are 4 camellias, 1, 2, 3, 4, that came from here. They were ancient specimens that were beautiful, and we were able to get them for this garden. So I wanted to acknowledge the fact that Magnolia had a hand in doing this garden back in 1986, because we were able somehow, I don't know how we got them, to get 4 very fine old camellias. Either that's urban legend or it really happened, but I think we've been telling people it has. The landscape contractor showed up with them and said that's where they came from, so we believe them. Anyway, there are these 4 corners of the beds. This is a yopon, a vomitoria that was flipped up like that, this upright, formal shape. It's only this tall. It looks bigger in the picture. That was also done by Jane Sims in Madison, Georgia, which we also got those flowers from. Many of the plants here. roses festoon and overthrow the door of this little garden building. And the plant, the edging, I know you're dying to ask me what it is. That's Kingsville boxwood. It once came from Beckett's nursery here. And we originally got it from a Idlewild, and then a Idlewild said, you're getting so much of it, go to Beckett's, they'll give it to you wholesale. And so we had a long relationship with them for many decades, and then they don't have it anymore, they don't have anything anymore. And so we have an organic gardener in Atlanta who has been clipping hedges of this for 20 years, and he stuck the cuttings in his woodland, and he's the only person providing it, to my knowledge, today. He has 4,000 or 5,000 of them in the shade of his trees growing. I love it because it stays close to the ground. You realize that this is only 4 inches tall, and that's been in that picture is probably maybe 20 years old. Which it's been in there for a long time. So now anyway, here we go. Look lovingly at your garden. These are your 3 points. There'll be a test following this lecture. Just say yes to sickness and in health. Use the principles of therapeutic garden design in your own homework. And then put on a party hat. Give it a new set of clothes. Take it on vacation. Make it romantic. And so I want to thank you very much for joining me for this love affair with gardens. I would just thrilled to get to share this with you. And now we're going to move the presentation to where if you all would like to say anything about what you got from this, your ideas of a romantic garden, I would welcome it if anyone would like to raise their hand or ask me a question. You don't even have to say what you think about romantic gardens, but if you have any questions or sharing opportunities, now's the time to do it. Everybody feel like to work? Thank you very much. If you'd like to, of course, buy a book or talk with us, we'll be right up here. And thanks again for being here.
Thank you. I would like to give credit to credit due. I have to acknowledge the people who helped make Magnolia what it is, make it look like it is. This Miles Beach, and you're probably the first person who's ever stumped Miles on
that picture, Miles. We'll get together on that one.
She didn't stop. I just need to put her.
Oh, okay. And my friends in the back row there, they're the hands in the soil. Thank you all for coming. Oh, there you are. There you are. So thank you all for coming, and see you next time. Thank you.